Hello and welcome to Duel Bros. Today we're coming at you with a Timelord deck profile just in time for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. That's right, I'm a nerd. Anyway, starting it right off, I have 3 copies of Sandy on the Timelord. One of the only Time Lords with 4,000 attack and defense. All the Time Lords have the shared effect that they cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and neither player takes battle damage involving them. Then they all have a secondary effect that happens at the end of the battle phase if it battled. And this one's effect for that is deal 2,000 damage. Then we have 3 copies of Michion, the Time Lord. Same first effect about the can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. Then at the end of the battle phase, if it battles, halve your opponent's life points. So straight up, cut them in half. Then we have 2 copies of Raffion, same first effect. At the end of the battle phase, inflict damage equal to the attack power of one monster it battled this turn. So say they have Blue Eyes White Dragon on the field, you'll inflict 3,000 damage to them. Then we have 1 copy of Lazy on the Time Lord. Lazy on the Time Lord also can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. It has 2 secondary effects. I guess that means secondary and third. Anyway, one, when your opponent draws, they take 1,000 damage once per turn. So literally during their draw phase, they will take 1,000 damage. Then at the end of the battle phase, if it battles, shuffle all cards from your opponent's graveyard back into the deck. Then 1 copy of Zaphion the Time Lord. It also has a third effect, but it's less relevant because of its first effect. If it leaves the field and goes to the graveyard, draw a card. At the end of the battle phase, if it battled, shuffle all spells and traps your opponent controls back into the deck. Then there's Meteon the Time Lord. At the end of the battle phase, return all other monsters on the field to the hand and then inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent for each. Then 1 copy of Halion the Time Lord. At the end of the battle phase, if this monster battled and your life points are lower than your opponent's, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the difference. That's really good because you only ever really have 1 Time Lord monster on the field. They're all level 10s, and they have the effect that if you control no monsters, you can normal summon without contributing. Basically, you will most of the time just have 1 on the field. If your opponent outs it, your field's pretty much wide open. So you could lose a lot of life points. Halion helps make up for that difference. Then we're running 3 copies of Time Maiden. If you control no monsters, you can special summon it from your hand. It can also be treated as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of a Time Lord monster. You can tribute it to add any Time Lord monster with 0 attack from your deck to your hand. Basically, all of them except for Sandion. Yeah, Sandion. Then, while it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and special summon any Time Lord monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions if it has 0 attack and defense. Drawback is you can't special summon again that turn, or at all that turn. Basically, same thing as Pot of Duality. Then we have 2 copies of Winged Dragon Ra Sphere Mode. You should all know what it does. You can technically trade it out for any regular kaiju. I chose Sphere Mode because I am running Mound of the Bound Creator, and it'll search it if it leaves the field. So it's just so that I have a kaiju that can also technically be searched. Alright, then we have 2 copies of Swift Scarecrow, because like I said, you'll only have 1 on the field. If they have an out for that 1, Swift Scarecrow, when your opponent declares a direct attack, you can discard it to negate the attack and end the battle phase. Therefore, protecting your life for another turn, and hope you draw into another Time Lord or Time Maiden to protect you once again. Then, lastly, for the monsters, we have 1 copy of Dimension Shifter. If you have no cards in your graveyard, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and until the end of the next turn, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. We don't really use our graveyard with this deck, so Dimension Shifter is really good because it won't affect you. It will only affect your opponent. Now, keeping that in mind, we'll get into our spells with 3 copies of Dimensional Fissure. Any monster sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead, banished instead, whichever. I think I have old copies. Anyway, also in the spells, we have 3 copies of Mound of the Battling Creator. Level 10 monsters can't be targeted or destroyed with effects. The second part about it being destroyed doesn't matter, but it helps keep your monsters safe from being targeted with, like, a banish or something. Then we're running 1/1-for-1 to search our Time Maiden, 1 Foolish Burial to search our Time Maiden, and then lastly we're running 1 Harpy's Feather Duster to deal with your opponent's spells and traps, and 1 copy of Pot of Extravagance, because we do not actually have an extra deck. I will not be showcasing an extra deck because I have nothing in this to actually summon it, so it really doesn't matter what you put in there. You can put Pot of Extravagance up to 3, to be completely honest. I just only have 1 copy and didn't feel it all too necessary to get it. I would definitely put Pot of Extravagance up to 3. If so, the last trap I'm going to show is what you should cut for it. It's just in there at the moment. Anyway, that's the spells. For the traps, we're running 3 copies of Macrocosmos. Basically Dimensional Fissure, but for spells and traps as well. So any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. Like I said, we do not use our graveyard except with Time Maiden, and even then it's easy to play around using Time Maiden with Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos. It's just rather... It's a lot easier to deal with decks if they do not have their graveyard, because a lot of decks run off their graveyard, and we do not use our graveyard, so... yeah. Then we're running 2 copies of There Can Be Only One. You can put it up to 3 if you really want. I put it at 2 because I'm running a lot of floodgates as is. Then we're running 2 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute's just there because your monsters can't be destroyed, so summon a Timelord, activate Torrential Tribute, wipe the field. And then the last 3 cards, they were just a thought. I'm reconsidering. I would replace 1 with a 3rd copy of There Can Only Be One, and the other 2 with copies of Pot of Extravagance, but it is 3 copies of Ojamo Trio. If you really wanted, you could also put 3 copies of Ojamo Duo in there, shut off their field and graveyard, but it's not necessary. You can completely ignore these 3 altogether. Anyway, that is it for our Timelord deck profile. And of course I had to have my Matt Smith Matt, my Matt for the background, because Timelords and Doctor Who's 60th anniversary is coming up. With... get it in the shot. I'm doing terrible here. David Tennant coming back as the 14th Doctor. Anyway, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the deck profile, and if you didn't enjoy the deck profile, leave a like and subscribe anyway. I mean, what's it gonna really hurt? I mean, what will pop up on your feed for a little bit, but with you ignoring it, it won't matter. Yeah, just hit that like and subscribe button. Anyway, adios, sayonara, ciao, goodbye.